That's right, I've moved on to books. I always do all these videos talking about music, and after a certain, amount of time, I've realized that music is just too pedestrian for me. It's kind of beneath me. I want to be more intellectual. So now I'm switching to books, and I'm going to talk about books. This is probably going to be the only time I ever do this, talking about books. I do know how to read. Yes, I do. But I can't do this as a continuous series with books. But I am going to do this one. This is a book called How to Howl Like a Wounded Animal, subtitled Music Stories Volume 1, by a guy called Adam Sewell. Now, there's Adam right there. Now, what this is, Adam was in a band called Monster Voodoo Machine, a Toronto band in the mid-90s. I guess they started around 94, 93, I think was their first album, something like that. Now, a couple things. First of all, this book, it doesn't really have anything to do with Toronto or the Toronto music scene. It's not an autobiography. It's not a book about Adam's life story. It's 27, I think is what it is, 27 chapters, 27 stories. Yeah, 27 stories in 27 chapters about Adam's, I guess, kind of life in a band. It's just stories. Some of them are funny, some of them are kind of violent. It's things that have happened in his life. He also did. He worked for I think it was Sanctuary Records. Yeah, Sanctuary Records Canada. So just stories of him, random from different eras, different years, about things that he's experienced in his life. Now, I was never a Monster Voodoo Machine fan. I remember them at the time, and I just, at that point in the 93, 94, whatever it was, it just wasn't what I was into. I did listen to them. I watched a couple of their videos last week after I read this book, just to kind of remind me. And I thought, yeah, they're okay, but I was just never into them. So I didn't buy this as a Monster Voodoo Machine fan. I bought this just, and I heard about this because my friend Joe Rico, who played in Sacrifice, which is a great Canadian band that I love, I saw him post about this book a few months ago, and I thought, I wanna read that book. So I did, and I ordered it, and I got it, and I read it. Took a while to get here. Things move very slowly in Mexico. You're lucky to get anything at all in the mail sometimes. And it's a cool book. It's a little personalized here. Adam, I guess he signs every copy. It says, Dan, thanks for the support. And there's his inscription. Is that what it's called? Each one is individually numbered, 231 of 250. Really, I got this, 3 weeks ago, and I was already reading another book, so I finished that one and then read this one. I read this one in less than a week. But one of these books is very easy to read because of the way it's laid out. It's kind of like reading, Facebook posts or social media posts or tweets or something, a little bit bigger than that. But just a really easy book to get through. You can get through, 5 or 6 chapters without even realizing you were reading anything. And I enjoyed it. Now it says volume 1. I assume volume 2 is in the pipeline now. Maybe it's in the works. Maybe it's in the hopper. It's somewhere, I guess. But I assume I will read that too. But I'll talk about this a little bit. I'll go through it. Instead of, I always do these records track by track, I'm going to do this chapter by chapter. Now I can't remember every, what every chapter is about. And I'm not going to go into great detail. But I'll read the back too. It says 27 music-related stories taken from Sewell's anything but ordinary life, from violent early 80s hardcore punk clubs to arenas and boardrooms. The book is a collection of his brutally honest, hilariously self-deprecating, and occasionally tragic tales. All right. And by the way, it's called Howl Like a Wounded Animal. I think because from a review of a Monster Voodoo Machine show that a journalist or somebody wrote, and they said the singer sounds like the singer was howling like a wounded animal. So that's where the title was taken from. So there it is. So just going through this, not track by track, but chapter by chapter. I'm sure I'm not going to remember some of them. I finished this about a week ago. Maybe I should have done it then. Didn't have time last week. I was busy doing other things. The turning point I think that was when he chapter 1 is the turning point. I think that was when he kind of first started to realize that he wanted to be in the music industry or be in a band. Oh no, I screwed that up already. Ah, yeah, it was. Yeah, this is from when Adam was a kid. A story about somebody with a gun in a club in Toronto. Yeah, we have guns in Canada. Can you believe it? Peaceful Canada has guns. Chapter 2, LA 92. I think that was about LA 92. That was during the Rodney King riots. And I think Monster Voodoo Machine was there recording their first album, maybe, or EP, something. I can't remember. Chapter 3, Chicago 95. I think that was when he got mugged or thought he got mugged or thought somebody broke into his apartment. I can't remember. Chapter 4, I like this one. This chapter is called The Killer Rocks On. This was about the killer being Jerry Lee Lewis. I think it was when Adam was a teenager. He went to a place in I'm from Toronto, and there's a place there called the Ontario Place. I don't even know if it still exists, but he went to Ontario Place, and they used to have concerts there, and he saw Jerry Lee Lewis, and he and his friend were, I can't remember the exact story. They wanted to see Jerry Lee Lewis, meet him or get his autograph or something. I guess they were waiting. There's a road that connects Ontario Place and something. They were waiting, and the band came by. Jerry Lee Lewis's band came by, and Jerry Lee Lewis, when he finally came by separately in his own car, they said he was like, I think he was picking his nose or something, and he gave them the finger. He flipped them the bird when they were young kids. So that's that. Chapter 5, making an album can get you killed. Maybe I'm conflating some of these stories. Chapter 6, David Lee Roth is the name of this chapter. I think that one, if I remember correctly, was Adam talking about how David Lee Roth not personally taught him, but he kind of got inspiration from David Lee Roth, I think, to, encourage the crowd, put your hands in the air and jump around and bang your head and dance and do, and rock, things like that. Chapter 7, Bob Ezrin is on the phone. I think Bob Ezrin had called him, and there was a problem. I can't remember what it was. It was a week ago that I read this. Number 8, Smells Like Teen Voodoo. This was about when Kurt Cobain died and was somehow, I think, tied to Roddy Bottum from Faith No More, who's one of my favorite bands ever. Roddy Bottum, I guess, was going to play keyboards, of course, on a Monster Voodoo Machine album. I guess they were recording at the time. And I think something related to Kurt Cobain's death, it got canceled or something. Roddy didn't end up playing with them, but it's a story about Roddy Bottum related to Kurt Cobain's suicide. Chapter 9, Super Judge. This was a woman, I guess from, I think she was from Halifax or Fredericton or something, somewhere in Eastern Canada. Radio station, college radio station, university. We say university in Canada. And who had set up an interview to talk to Adam, thinking that he was in Monster Magnet and he was in Monster Voodoo Machine, and he said wrong band, and she said that she didn't want to talk to him. She thought Monster Voodoo Machine sucked, I think, and she had no interest in talking to him. Once she found out he was in Monster Voodoo Machine, not Monster Magnet. Maybe I'm spoiling the story. Maybe, not that anybody's going to go buy this book because of me, but anyway. The chauffeur story. This is maybe my favorite one. This was, Adam was at this time was working for, I guess, a record company doing promotion for them or something. And there was a band. Now, he didn't mention the band, which kind of bugs me because then you're wondering who it is. But I understand why he didn't say it, because that could cause problems for him down the road. I guess it's not a good career move to say something like this. And I guess so he was supposed to, this mystery band, whoever it was supposed to be doing an in-store, an autograph session, or an outdoor free concert, something. I think it was an autograph session on Yonge Street in Toronto. I think it might have been the HMV flagship store, which was at 333 Yonge. And there was lots of traffic, and Adam, I guess, couldn't get there to take the band to HMV. So he had to go around the block and ask them, you know what, could you get out here and walk there? And I guess everybody in the band said, yeah, sure. But there was one dick, I guess, who was very unhappy about that. and really, I guess, lambasted or chastised Adam, and said bad things to him, told him he wasn't very good at his job, wasn't professional, something like that. I don't know who the band was. I would love to know. I'm curious. 11, the nipple ring story. He got his nipple ring ripped out when he was on stage. The RV story. They had a really bad accident driving an RV when he was on tour with Monster Voodoo Machine. The Greg Allman story. This one was good too. I think at this point, this was later. He was working for a record company, and they were going to do a promotional thing, I think, with Greg Allman. I think they were going to drive from Toronto to a radio station in St. Catharines or Welland or Thorold or somewhere down there in southern Ontario. And again, horrible traffic and maybe a thunderstorm or something that prevented them from getting there, and they couldn't make it. And then I think later, Adam was, when Allman Brothers were playing a concert in the same junket, I guess, Adam was standing on the side of the stage. I'm imagining he was standing like this. I just read the words. I don't know how he was standing, but I imagine he was standing like this. And I guess he was tired and he had his eyes closed, and he didn't realize that people could see him. And he said Greg Allman caught him. I guess he opened his eyes, and Greg Allman was, as he was playing there, Allman was giving him the death stare for sleeping or dozing off during his concert. Chapter 14, 1998, part 1, the studio story. Not sure about that. There were some studio things. I don't remember. I get them conflated. 15 is Los Angeles 1995, which I guess is the part 2 of the LA 92. Interesting that he calls it LA 92 and Los Angeles 1995. A little bit of an inconsistency there. Continuity error. 16, Greendale. That was about being with Neil Young. I think that was at the Toronto Film Festival when Neil Young had Greendale, and Adam I think they went in, and Adam came out to do something, and he got locked out and couldn't go back in the theater. 17, The Front Man. I'm not sure what that one was about. 18, this was a good one too. You kind of like these scandalous stories. Chapter 18 was called Tour Manager Superstar. And at this point, Adam was the production manager for a promoter in Toronto. And again, an unnamed band came to Toronto, and their tour manager, I guess, in the rider, they asked for a bunch of stuff, and Adam had to go do the shopping for the band, for their tour rider. And they wanted a bunch of not vegetables. What's the opposite of vegetables? Fruits. They wanted a bunch of fruits, and it was in the winter, and they were just not available. And there was a snowstorm or something, and it took Adam all day to drive around to get the fruit, I think something like this, which he couldn't find, so he substituted it. And the tour manager of this band flipped out on him and got really angry because diva behavior, I think that's what they call it. This tour manager was a real diva. 19 is the Manson tour. They toured for 2 or 3 months with Marilyn Manson. So this is great experience, he said. Although interesting, he said that there was a preface to this chapter saying that if they had known now, how can I explain this? He said Manson was great, and there were some allegations about Manson in more recent years that made him seem like a really bad person. I guess he said if he had known then what Manson was going to be, they wouldn't have done the tour. Something like that. I could be wrong about that. 20, the street marketing story. I think that had something to do with Peter Steele, I think. 21, the Sassy story. Sassy is like a magazine or an online magazine, something like that. And they were going to do a feature, I think, on Monster Voodoo Machine. And I think this magazine or whatever it is, that I think it's geared towards teenage girls. I'm not sure. I can't remember. 22, Spin Baby Spin. This was a woman who had cut her hands open or something and was spinning around, spurting blood everywhere. 23, the Golden God story. This was a good one too. This was about Robert Plant. Robert Plant was, and now that reminds me, speaking of Robert Plant, going back a little bit to Greg Allman, I think in that story about the Greg Allman thing too, Adam was talking with some of the band, or I think they were on the bus when they were stuck in traffic trying to go to St. Catharines or whatever it was. And Adam was talking about that he'd heard about Marvin Gaye was in his later years was losing his mind and was like doing concerts wearing boxers or something and acting really weird. And he said Greg Allman got really mad at him and said Marvin Gaye was my friend. He never did that. But yeah, so 23, The Golden God Story. This was Robert Plant, and Robert Plant wasn't happy with his album sales and had a little confrontation with Adam about why, because Adam was, I guess, the A&R at that time. 24, 1XL, 2 at a time. I have no idea what that one is. Can't remember. 25 is called The Judas Priest Story. This is a good one too. Adam points out that, like me, I did Defenders of the Faith recently, and I mentioned I was never a big Judas Priest fan. Casual, I would say at best. And Adam didn't like Judas Priest at all. And Monster Voodoo Machine was either touring with Fight or Rob Halford's post-Judas Priest band, Fight, touring with them or played a show with them or something. And I guess after Fight had played, Adam was off to the side watching Fight, and Halford recognized him as, the singer from the opening band, Monster Voodoo Machine, and brought him out on the stage, and he was going to sing Breaking the Law. And the problem was that Adam was not a Judas Priest fan and had no idea about the lyrics I think it was Breaking the Law or Hell Bent for Leather. I think it was Breaking the Law. There I was, completely wasted, out of work and down. I don't even know the lyrics. No, I do know lyrics. There I was, completely out of work and down. As I drift from town to town. You don't know what it's like. You don't have a clue. Maybe I guess I know lyrics more than Adam does. That was a good story. 26, the Juno Award story. The Junos are, let's say the best way to say it is the Canadian Grammys. It's the music awards for the Canadian music. He got, what happened there? There was a problem. He had a little run-in with, I guess somebody that worked for his Monster Voodoo Machine was up for it and won Canadian Metal Album of the Year, I think. And so he was with somebody from his label manager, a woman, or I don't know, somebody from the label was talking to the drummer from Sloan, who is a pretty good Canadian band. And she introduced him. She said, "Oh, Adam, this is," I can't remember his name, the drummer from Sloan. And I guess the drummer from Sloan blew him off. He was like, yeah, Monster Voodoo Machine. And then chapter 27 is called 1998 Part 2, the end of Ozfest. Yeah, because they were on Ozfest. They were the only first and maybe only Canadian band. Probably not the only one, but at the time, the first Canadian band to ever appear on Ozfest. But there it is. And yeah, and speaking of Canadian music, the Junos, I think part of the reason why I didn't like Monster Voodoo Machine, it's stupid, but it's kind of a mental thing. I had this block. I was never that much into Canadian music, being a Canadian, because there's this thing called CanCom, which is Canadian content. And radio stations back then, and television stations, and magazines, maybe Canadian, they were made by law that they had to feature whatever it was, 20, 22%, 25% Canadian content, which led me to it gave me the attitude of, what, these guys, not Monster Voodoo Machine, but anybody, they're only getting on the radio and on Much Music and in magazines or whatever because they're Canadian. They're not really good. And I just felt like it was being forced on me, a lot of Canadian bands. And I think that really turned me off of a lot of Canadian music. I'm more open-minded now. Although I, Mother Earth is the best, and Scenery and Fish is the greatest Canadian album ever in my world. So this is called The Howl Like a Wounded Animal. I really enjoyed reading it, and I do believe I will read volume 2 when it comes out. So there it is, Howl Like a Wounded Animal.